Welcome back to Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig. Today I'm passing time with my friend Sharon. Hello, Sharon.
Hello.
We are talking about, because you are one of the co-founders of Hop Forward Society.
I am.
Which is, I don't know if enough people know about what's going on with it, but why it's so important, because it is all about making sure the craft beer scene here in Alberta and the industry's business partners are an inclusive, welcoming place, accessible for everyone. Because I feel this is accurate. When people think brewers, they think white bearded dudes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Usually cisgender straight.
100%. Yeah.
And that could be a high percentage of the brewers, but that's not a high percentage of the people coming and drinking these craft beers, right?
Exactly, yeah. Which is why Hop Forward started.
Yeah. And I found, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but Hop Forward started because the murder of George Floyd, one of the social media trends was Blackout Tuesday.
Yes.
Which seemed like a nice, supportive, we're here to support and welcome and we're here for this. But all it did was put a post up. And you called breweries out for it.
Exactly. I mean, it was definitely a moment of passion and emotion when everything was going on. And we see it with so many things, right? Social media is like that when something's happening in the world, you know, people post things. And not that it's not genuine all the time, but a lot of times it's like, okay, what are the actions actually tied to that? What does it mean? And so I started just, replying to breweries being like, hey, what does that mean? Hey, I love your beer. Like, what does it mean when you say we support our Black community or whatever it is? And got lots of responses, and it was really interesting to see sort of what people were saying. Yeah,
because one of the things that Hop Forward, I think, really represents and tries to showcase is, great, you've hosted this for International Women's Day.
Yeah.
Great, you've got a sparkly beer for Pride Week. Great, you're doing this because it's Black History Month. But what are you doing the rest of the time?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not that it's easy, I would say. So I definitely understand when breweries or places are like, oh, I don't know how to start. But really, it's just like taking, what you feel or what you might believe and like putting it into action. And actually, I think it takes sacrifice, which a lot of times people are very hesitant to do, whether it's like your time, energy, your money. Mm-hmm. It takes all of that to be able to actually make change. And it's not just like posting something or making a beer and then like giving, some monetary funds to that, right? So, yeah. Yeah,
there's so much more, and people will do just that bare minimum so much. And Hop Forward is giving the chance for marginalized community members, whether it's race, it's sexuality, gender, accessibility. Like I want to like quickly mention one of the things that I love like following is you guys post stuff. And there was one time that posted about why straws were important to have. So, because I was like, oh, it's not just about, like, certain things. It's also ability. Like, able-bodied people or non-able-bodied people. You're giving resources to this as well.
And I think there's so many of that, and I'm still learning a lot. And I really credit a member of our board, Lionel McGroney, and he has cerebral palsy, and he's the one who actually has brought this to our attention. And so he always needs a straw to be able to drink, to enjoy beer. And so I kind of noticed that, and there's so many things that I've been learning. Like even the other day I saw something online where I think a bar or brewery had like installed a doorbell at their door, and I was like, oh, of course, because like sometimes you can't like open the door depending on whether you're able-bodied in different ways. And I never thought about it. And of course, a lot of times you can't have an automatic door all the time, but they had done a doorbell. So, and with a sign that says like, oh, if you need like, assistance coming in, just ring the doorbell. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, obviously it's not like a perfect fix, but it's something. So I think there's so many things, like even myself who's involved in this work, always learning, right? I'm always learning different things in the different ways. Like, our world is really, in our society, set up to actually not be that open and inclusive and accepting to everyone.
Yeah.
You know, that's the way the system is built. And so how can we just be better at, you know, making small changes, whatever it may be?
Right. Have you found most places have been open to working with Hop Forward and reaching out, or was there a lot of hesitation at first from some places, like, it's not that big of a problem?
Yeah, I think at first it was really, of course, you know, it's like the hot thing. Like, I like to say it's like not really sexy anymore. And I feel like there's always like the sexy cause of the time, which is like funny and sad. You know, you laugh so you don't cry. But, you know, so, you know, at that time I was like, wow, people are like, yes, like, we'd love to meet with you and we'd love to talk. And there was lots of breweries that we had lots of conversations with. And then beyond that, I think that's like once time passes, that's when you see sort of like the true, you know, commitment to actually making change. Because again, like we were talking about before, it does take time, and it's not like you do a couple things and then you check the box. You're like, great, we fixed, you know, all these systemic issues in our brewery, right? Like, it's a long game, and like I don't necessarily think the work will ever be done. So that's definitely unfortunate, and I get it. Like, people are trying to run businesses, and you know, it's hard being like small business owners and things like that. But I think what has been really I think encouraging is seeing the breweries who have taken the time and really understand, okay, this is a long game, and what are the small and big things that we can do to actually like embed our values in our culture. And I think there's sometimes a lot of fear too from breweries to speak out about different things, and it's not even like, you know, you have to go and like, I don't know, have a protest or whatever. But a lot of breweries are afraid to kind of show where they stand in values because they don't want to alienate people. But really what they're doing is alienating those who might not feel like they belong in a space. Right. And so I think that fear often, you know, like holds people back, and I think that's unfortunate and like a little silly, to be honest.
It is, because it's those things where people come to this event that Hop Forward's put on at this brewery, and they feel like, oh, maybe I can come here. And so when the next time they're out with friends and they're wanting to go out to a place, like, well, remember when we went to that brewery? I think we're welcome there. Like, and won't look twice at.
It's been so funny, even some of the events we've hosted, where, you know, some of the attendees have been like, I don't even drink beer, or I don't even like beer, and they're there like sipping the beer and like taking part, and I'm like, oh, okay. But they were given like permission in a way to say, hey, you belong here, come to this event, you're welcome. And it kind of opened up a new thing for them, and I think that's amazing, right? Like, people who never would have stepped in a brewery and who've never drank beer because they feel like, ooh, maybe it's not for me, they're like coming and they're like, oh, I don't even drink this, but I love this, right? And so it's like, I mean, it's also opening up like so many new people to come to a business. So from a business standpoint, like, don't you want more people to come and like purchase your products and be in your spaces? Like, I think that's what all, like, you know, business owners want to make a profit.
Right. Well, and so I think this is the thing. There's going to be people listening to this podcast for sure that never thought twice that just a brewery might not seem welcoming to everybody because the privilege that they have had, whether they are white or just a male, like able-bodied, not queer, and doesn't like appear to look queer, if you will.
100%.
And so this is what it is about with Hop Forward, is making everybody feel welcome, because you don't always feel that.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and you hit the nail on the head, it's privilege, right? It's privilege to like leave your house every day and just be able to like, you know, be carefree and willy-nilly and like be like, oh wow, and never think about like, oh, will I be safe in this space? Or like walk in and be like, ooh, like I might overhear a comment that is like directed towards me. And I know you know that experience, right? Where it's like you go out in the world and sometimes like, you know, to some degree you don't know like what's gonna shake out depending on like where you are, or you kind of have your guard up, I would say, in a lot of places, you know, because it can always turn, or you might hear someone saying something and you like automatically like, oh man, like this is just very alienating, I guess, for me as an individual. And so I think it's like basic human empathy, I think, a lot of times, and people just realizing like, okay, not everyone is walking through the world with the same experience as me, and this might feel like a very welcoming environment, but maybe it's not. And I think the beer community, not that it's conscious, but I think it falls into the trap of like typically being a community that people are like, oh, it's so laid back and like so open, you know what I mean? It's not like wine, which kind of has a bougie sort of like connotation to it.
Or cocktails as well.
Yes, like where there's like maybe like a little class thing where it's like, oh, you have to have money. And it's like beer is accessible. That's what we've always heard. It's like you don't have to pay a lot for it. It's like open to anyone, you know, regular old Joe Jane. But at the same time, I think that makes people be like, oh, I don't necessarily need to do anything because like beer is welcoming. It's whatever. But it's like, actually, no, it's not necessarily.
Yeah, well, because I chatted about this at one of the events that I hosted, where I present sometimes very straight, I guess, because again, I am not always sure how it's going to go, and I've had customers at breweries who say like, I want something like nothing gay, like, and they want like not a fruity beer, if you will, and they're using it gay, and I'm just like, well, I'm gay, because sometimes it's and. Luckily, I was the server and not just a fellow customer. But if I was and I heard that, I would be like, okay. But I've got that privilege as a white male that people just, think they can say whatever in front of me. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, not necessarily needs to be your burden to bear. But I do think that like, and it shouldn't be only the responsibility of gay people, like queer people, like black people, whatever it be to, play that role. But in saying that, I think like you're a really good example of someone who's like actively uses their privilege to be able to try to make a difference in some way, right? Like just by, you could have just stayed silent and been like very upset, which you would have you have every right to do, right? You don't necessarily have to be like, well, I'm gay and like proclaim it, because sometimes that's not the safest thing to do, right? So I think that's like, you're a great example, and others people can learn is like, okay, you're in a position, whether you're just a cisgendered, straight white person, whatever it is, like you have the ability to like advocate for myself, I'm a black woman, but I'm able-bodied, right? I have, lots of, inherent privilege in that way. And so how can I make a difference in, opening up the industry or other things for people who might not have the same privileges as me, right? And so, like, how can you use your position to try to make a difference, I think.
Yeah, and it's just working together. And it's these things we teach our children. Yeah. Very early on, Sesame Street's there saying, work together, we can help each other out and make the world a better place. And that's something that we indoctrinate to our children, if you will. Yet, we become adults and it's looking out for themselves. And they're like, why? Why aren't we just working together like we were taught as kids?
Yeah, exactly, right? It starts from a young age, but people grow up and they kind of get into their own little, bubbles, and sometimes it's hard to pop those.
So, hop forward. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about. First of all, events.
Yes.
You all do events. You've had panels, movie screenings.
Yeah. We've tried to do a lot of different things, just trying to reach different audiences and different people. So you're right. Yeah, we've had some film screenings of some cool documentaries that are focused on beers. We've hosted some community conversations. And so this is really just bringing people to just chat about, general topics like belonging and what that means. And always centered around a beer tasting. Yeah. We've hosted a couple events specifically for racialized women and women of color. So, those are just more fun, casual events, but making the space dedicated to people who don't feel like beer is for them, and those have been a great success. And then we also recently just hosted a really unique event in Edmonton with our friends at Polyrhythm Brewing, and that was a sip and sign, and that was partnered with the Edmonton Deaf Association.
Oh, nice.
And so, people got to have a tasting and learn some sign language that is related to being in tap rooms. And I know there's also breweries in Calgary. I think Establishment has been hosting some sign language nights as well. And so that's really cool to see not only, I think, again, a lot of breweries or owners are like, oh, where do I start? And a great way is to just host an event, use your space, whether it's inviting a group from the community, saying, hey, like, do you have any events? Come host it in our space, and making that affordable and accessible to them, partnering with different organizations, and also like, you don't have to recreate the wheel. So I know establishment was like, oh, I've seen that event in Edmonton. We'd love to like do that. And it's like, yeah, do it. Like you can do it. And, just host the space. And so I think that's a really easy way to kind of like make a difference. Cause then people see, oh, wow, like that brewery had that group there or that group there. And it tells you something about that brewery. Right. And it shows like, okay, this is what they value and this place is accessible. And it's like, I think such a easy opportunity. I think because you have the space, and so exactly you already do the thing. So
And as someone who hosts events, most of the time I host them Monday through Thursday because that's when the breweries aren't as busy and they're trying to bring people in.
Yes.
So just do something.
Exactly.
People are looking to get out, especially as it's getting like nicer weather, knock on wood.
Yeah.
People want to get out of the house.
Yeah. And I know there's so many nonprofits. Like I used to work in nonprofits for a long time, and who like always are looking for event space or different community organizations that just like would love partnerships, right? And even just amplifying the work that they do. Like, why not, right? It takes work to be able to let's like look and see, what we can do. But, that's just such an easy thing to do.
Yeah. And again, like learning sign language and not asking you to become skilled like a second language in signing, but learning some basic ones that are, I think, just so important. And then you're just having a beer and it's great.
Yeah, exactly. And so definitely those are events that we do. And then we try to provide resources as much as possible for our businesses and members and things like that. And so we have like an online portal, and I think it's just trying to like do some education. And I think it's so important even for people who work in breweries. Like a simple way to do this is just like educating your staff. So, I mean, most businesses have like staff meetings or team meetings or like ways that they connect with staff. So how can you like make those things part of the conversation? And you can even take an advantage of like certain months. So, hey, it's Pride Month. Like, why not use that example to educate, staff on like, okay, wow, what are like some queer issues? What are things that you can learn? What about inclusive language? Like, what can we use these sorts of events, not just making a beer or whatever, but like what can we do to actually have some of those conversations and educate the people who work in your brewery? And I think that's where that embedding of culture happens, and that's how that long-term change happens, because the people who work at your brewery are like, great, now I have the language and I have the knowledge to be able to like understand and like use this as I'm in a tap room and be able to maybe support our patrons who might be here and just like hopefully be a better person. And so that's another thing that we also do.
I didn't even think about that. Like, if you only have a certain amount of resources, why not use it on your staff? And then hopefully it's the trickle out.
It's like a ripple effect. Yeah, exactly.
That is, I didn't even think about that. Because most breweries are 8 to 10, 12 people.
Exactly, right? And maybe like people feel like, oh, that's nothing. Like we don't have a big staff, so we like don't, we might not need, or it's not. It's like, no, that's important. 8 people having language and knowledge and learning is like 8 more people, which is like such a big deal. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. Like I know some places have even done like, oh, we like read a book like all together and like we learned and talked about it, or an article, or we all watched the same like video. I don't know. It doesn't have to be this big thing like, okay, we got to bring this trainer in, because I know a lot of times like the money part of it is a barrier. So it's great breweries that can bring that training in, but if you can't, there's so many resources online, right? Like so many free things where you can just learn and just increase that understanding in your business.
Right. Yeah. No, that's such a smart idea.
We try.
And then one of the absolutely awesome things I think that Hop Forward does is grants that you have, anniversaries for people who want to be part of this industry or learn something new or maybe move up, that you offer. And it can be as simple as going to take the old brewers program,
Yes.
or even just getting a pro serve.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Again, like, there's money as a barrier for so many people to do things. So it can be a pro server. We've had folks who were wanting to get their Cicerone, like level 1, to, boost their beer knowledge. And we had someone who did a really cool project where they wanted to take photographs of, underrepresented people so that breweries and other businesses can use it in their marketing. Because, again, a lot of times it's like, well, who we see marketed, like you're saying, like bearded white, white heterosexual men. So it's like, if people don't see, different people in your branding, they can't necessarily know that they belong there. And so she did that, which is really cool. Another person wanted to, up their skills in beer education, and kind of they're someone who is hard of hearing and so has that disability, and so they want to kind of incorporate their beer knowledge and make it more accessible as a beer educator, so they applied for that grant. So it's just been all over, and of course some brewers as well. And so it's been really cool to see where people go from there, like whether it's completing their projects, or one person who now works at like a cidery in Ontario, and then someone else who's like at Banded Peak here in Calgary. And like there's just been so many people who've gone on to do like really cool things, which is really exciting to see.
Did you, when you started Hop Forward with Aaron, did you know that, were you hoping, are you surprised with how many applicants you got for these different
every year we're like, is anyone gonna apply? Because it's hard. It's that like promotion, right? It's with anything, right? Getting the word out is so hard, and everyone who works on Hop Forward, it does it off the side of their lives, basically. Like we all have full-time jobs and like families and lives and responsibilities, and so a lot of times it's like the capacity to kind of like grow it is limited, but so we always like put it out and we like promote it, and we're like, oh, are people gonna apply? And it's really cool to have people apply for it and see, wow, like they are interested, and the money is it's not like a life-changing amount, but it's a life-boosting amount, and so that's been really cool.
People forget that there's some things that it's not $10,000 thing that they need to change something, and sometimes it's just a couple hundred, and it will make a big difference for them. But some people don't realize that they're not also privileged with money, that they don't have this opportunity. So it's like, what? It's only $300. Why aren't you doing that?
Exactly.
$300 can be a lot.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's been people who've applied who's like, these are my books for my semester at Olds to, be in the brew program. It's like, great. That's awesome. Like, that's the one less thing you have to think about as a student. And I think that's like such an amazing thing.
Yeah. No, it's those little things that just helps people.
Yeah, exactly.
What have you learned or got from being part of Hop Forward?
I've learned a lot. I think I've learned have so much respect, even more for people who do work in like the diversity, equity, like whatever space, because it's hard work and it takes a lot. I've learned a lot about, I think, other individuals who might not have as much like access to spaces, and learned a lot about that. Like I talked about that, people with disabilities, and really learning about the way our world, like, of course, is like not built in any way really to support. Like we've come a long way in terms of disability, rights, but man, there's still a long way to go. So I think that's been the biggest learning for me. And I think that is, I think for me is always realizing like, there is so much for me to learn and so much for me to understand, and also realizing like no two experiences are the same. And so it's just been really like humbling, but also very like enlightening, to just kind of learn about people's different experiences and show up in a way that hopefully is positive and makes a difference.
Since you became because you started this and then you became a mom. How has becoming a mother, bringing a child into this world, has it made you want to fight harder for this stuff? I mean, I definitely, that makes me think about it way more. I don't want her to feel like she has limits, even though the world will tell her she has limits. And even, you talking about being a straight presenting gay man, my daughter is biracial. And so
she is going to go out in the world and have privileges that me as a Black woman or her cousins or things like that don't have. And so it's also equipping her when we talk about learning and knowledge of like how to use her privilege to be able to, you know, help others and use it in a way that is affirming for herself and also the others around her. So definitely that's something I think about it a lot. It's like how we show up in public and how I want her to, you know, go out and, you know, hopefully she doesn't have to like carry the burden, you know, but hopefully be a person who's like also accepting and also, you know, showing people like, hey, like there shouldn't be these boundaries and these limitations. Right. So definitely.
We had, Hop Forward was part of, they had a guest speaker from Vancouver?
From Toronto.
Toronto, yes. Mm-hmm. And they spoke about, one of the things was, like, everybody kind of, breweries really started having these, like, kind of like code of conduct and, like, in the space.
Yes.
And, you know, this is for everybody. But you pointed out, like, if I'm there and I have to look for it and, like, really seek it out, or if it's just hanging up in your bathroom. So it's just, like, those little things that I think, again, breweries might, or not just breweries, businesses, restaurants, places that bring in all these craft beer, they think that they, like, oh, we've got one.
Yeah, it's like hidden away.
But it's these little things that needs to be more visible.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's Ren Navarro. And it's so true. Like, I think about breweries, you know, Born is one of them, Born Brewing, Annex. Like, you walk in there and they have their humongous, like, pride flag. Just, like, hanging from the rafters. And that is just, like, it's such a basic thing. But, like, wow, that tells me something when I walk in a space. Like, okay, wow, this brewery believes that, you know, trans lives matters. They believe in like pride. They believe in like equality. That's like telling me something when I walk into these spaces, and it might be a turnoff for some people who come. And I think it's Erin at Born at our last event. She was like, you know what? Like, we are welcome to everyone, but not everyone. Like, if you're a jerk or if you don't believe in these values, then you don't have to come to our brewery. And I think that's a bold thing for owners to say. And you might say it verbally like she does, or you might say it by, you know, putting your big pride flag, being like, yeah, like, we are here and this is what we believe in. And so it is very simple things like that, right? Like, I think that's so cool. Like pride flag, or, you know, I've seen in breweries or other businesses where they have like a small little Black Lives Matter sign, or, you know, every child matters, or whatever it is. I think just like it doesn't have to be a huge thing, but it should be public or visible in some way. And I think that means something. Yeah.
Well, I don't even think I've ever told Erin, but when I realized that we were keeping the flag up past Pride, and it just like moved me so much, because it just like, this is a home, this is a place I spend a lot of my free time at, work there, help out there. And so to just know that, like, they've always got my back and they're not hiding it, it means a lot.
I think you bring up a good point, and it comes up a lot around Pride, like rainbow washing, where businesses just are like, great, we have our Pride logo and we have our Pride flag. And then after Pride, it's like, you never see it again until next year. And it's like, not that those breweries don't believe in that, but it's like, why? Like, why is that only during Pride? Like, again, it goes into that embedding in culture. It's like, is it actually embedded in culture if it's not visible all the time? If it's only like for this 1 month? Like, how can you just have these things visible all the time so it's always top of mind and something that's thought about, not just like packed away in the back, like after Pride? Like, it's always infuriating to me when I see things like that.
I mean, and that's just it. I always get annoyed if the only time this place ever does a drag show, drag brunch, is only during Pride.
Exactly.
What are you doing?
Yeah. Exactly. You can do a drag thing any day. You can do a Black history or Black focus thing any day. You can, you know, an Indigenous, it doesn't only have to be on National Reconciliation Day. It's like, these things matter all the time, and so you can have them at any time of the year.
Yeah. Like, and another great one is, we see it 2 weeks before as they start brewing the beers for International Women's Day.
Yes, for Pink Boots,
And then International Women's Day post of the maybe staff or community members. Sometimes it's like, oh, right, you don't have
any women working in your space,
and then maybe another post a couple days later thanking everybody to come in who helped raise funds for whatever charity that they chose, usually Pink Boots Society.
Yep.
and then we never see anything about
That's it.
your female staff.
Yep.
Or you're just that they're always welcome, whatever.
Exactly. And it's like also thinking about like, okay, if you don't have any if you don't have women, if you don't have any, like, why though? Like, you know, I understand in different places, obviously the demographic isn't there. Like, if you're in some small town somewhere in Alberta and you have your brewery there might not be as many, like, people of color or things like that. But it's like, there's certain things it's like, okay, like, I mean, women, like, that's a basic one where you're like, why isn't there any women working here? This makes no sense to me. Like, why? And also, I think even folks who have you know, women in their businesses or have, you know, queer people or whatever, thinking about like, are those people the only people advocating for these things or doing these events? Of course, a lot of people, it's a passion thing for me. So I know, like, in my professional life, I'm involved in, like, ED, I work at my work, and, you know, as a volunteer working group, because I'm like, oh, I'm passionate about this. But, like, are you an ally actually in your business, or are you just like, okay, that one woman in our business is gonna plan this, or like, oh, it's Pride, let the, like, gay person here do it? And it's like, okay, maybe they want to, but, like, are you actually giving the resources? Are you actually, like, supportive and active members? Like, it shouldn't be their responsibility to just do it as well.
It shouldn't just be their responsibility. You know, use your resources when you have them, but don't just be like, well, Sharon, you're the woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Sharon, you're the black person. Do the post for Black History Month.
100%. It's like, well, you know,
I wanted to quickly touch on something you mentioned that Aaron said, and I think this is very important for businesses to remember, so that's why I kind of wanted stuck with me and wanted to bring it back. Hop Forward is trying to make these places inclusive and welcoming to everybody. With that asterisk, what Sharon said, if you're a douchebag. We're not going to try. And I think and you kind of mentioned it earlier about not wanting to alienate people, but it's trying to welcome everybody and be inclusive. But if you're going to be an asshole and, like, you just aren't understanding and you're just going to come in, no, this is not for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you're a brewery owner and is like, well, we don't want to, like, alienate people, I think you need to, like, take a look in a mirror and say, like, why do you think a person who believes that Black Lives Matter, a person who doesn't believe that, you know, queer people should be out in the world and existing, why do you think that person should be welcome in your brewery? Like, why are you comfortable with that? Like, why are you comfortable with that existing, where you're making people's, like, humanity and people who they are, like, this, like, oh, it's just a preference, you know what I mean? It's not like saying, oh yeah, we don't, like, serve any, like, non-vegetarian things here, right? It's like, okay, like, you know, great, have this, like, vegetarian options. That's, like, definitely something you should be, you know, welcome and open to people. It's not like that. It's not a food preference. These are people's, like, humanity. This is who people are. So, like, why are you okay with someone coming to your business, having these views, and just existing like that? Like, why aren't you okay with alienating those people? Like, doesn't that make you uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't, so then that means you're the asshole as well. But like, it's, think about it.
Yeah. My actual first thought as you were speaking there was, it's their uncle or their best friend.
So it makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Again, so it's like, that should make you uncomfortable, and think about that. Like, why you're okay. It's not saying, like, you need to go and disown your family, but maybe you need to have some hard conversations with your family. And if you're, you know, if you're saying, like, okay, we don't want to post this because we don't want to alienate people, it's like, okay, so are you having these things present in your brewery? Are you hosting events that maybe someone who has those views might see and be like, oh, wow, I'm going to learn something? No, you're probably not, right? So it's like, you're basically saying, oh, we believe in that too, I think. So I think you have to be okay with alienating people who are not good people, who don't have good values, who want people to be excluded, who don't believe everyone has the right to, like, live and play and enjoy a beer and whatever it is in the world. Like,
Well, and I think, and we started off chatting about social media and just the bare minimum, but as we're recording this, today is the Transgender Day of Visibility, and I am conscious of who is posting about it today, especially with what's going on in Alberta.
Yes.
And the UCP and their backward, stupid views on this. This is something that Hop Forward is trying to showcase and be inclusive. So now today's a perfect example of what are these breweries doing? Are they talking about it? Or are they afraid that they're going to alienate people who don't support transgender people?
Exactly. It's like it's like living, I always say this, like living your values out loud.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's enough. And, it's a very old school thing and a privileged thing to be like, we don't need to bring politics into this. Like, well, everything is political. Like, that is the world we live in. Like, that's a privileged thing to say is like, oh, I just like don't talk about politics. Yeah, because your life or your humanity or who you are has never been a question of politics.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? You've never had like a politician being like, oh yeah, we don't believe that you should like be in our school, or like we don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's just wild to me. And so I think that those times are gone. Like, everything is political, obviously, like you're saying, like the UCP's backwards views on so many things, especially their like continued attack on LGBTQ people in our province. And so it's just like, what are you going to do about it, right? Like, you have to be political because that's the way it is.
Yeah, it's the way it is. And so, again, just make that stand. And you're going to have those people who, I know I've seen other businesses who made a strong stand about something supportive and good, and people been like, I've never been there before, but now I'm following you, and I'm going to look for your stuff out in the liquor stores, or I'm going to come to your space next time I'm in Calgary or Edmonton. Like, people are following businesses that aren't even in their city because they're seeing these stands and like, good for you. Yeah,
and that's something when I first started, calling out breweries, I had people who were like, oh, so who are like the good ones? And I still have people ask me like, so who are the good breweries? Like, what? Like, they message me and they're like, so like, where should I go? Where should I buy beer? I'm going to buy beer. Like, who are the good breweries? People take notice, right? And so it's like they want to buy beer from breweries that support them, and I do the same thing, like with anything, right? Like, I buy things based on like who I want to support, and so I think that's so important. And I also, a lot of people, like, the thing that really frustrates me is this whole idea of cancel culture, which is like so annoying. Because even if you look at breweries or businesses who have quote unquote been canceled, they have not been canceled. No. We all can probably think of someone or a brewery or something like that, and you're like, they're doing fine. Like, some of them even better than they were when they quote unquote got canceled. They've won awards. You know what I mean? It's like, these people aren't canceled actually, because there are still a lot of people who are okay with the status quo. So if that's your fear of like whatever this weird cancel culture, which doesn't exist, like, that's not a thing. Like, no one gets canceled. A business isn't shuttered because like they do something, right? So there's businesses that are putting out just crap beers and not doing good, but they're still there. Exactly. Like, there's some breweries that I just really don't like their beers, and I've spoken to other friends who just are like, it's not good, but somehow they're just trucking on. So let the like assholes go buy that beer, and that's fine. So there's always beer of like not great people to buy. So don't let that stop you. Like, that somehow you're not gonna get business because you're speaking out on something. You'll probably get more business in different people and new people, wanting to buy your beer. Speaking of beers, what are some of your favorite styles of beers? So my favorite style of beer is a Saison. Oh, really? I love a Saison. Like, I love a funky beer, but I also love like a porter or a stout. I like a lot. I love an ESB. And there's certain beers, like, I like most beers, but like sometimes it's very seasonal. Like, I am not really trying to drink a NEPA outside of like June, July, August. Like, it's just not for me. I know people are like, like, I like the juicy, like, and I'm like, I don't know why. It just seems like hot weather beer to me. I was going to say, you're on a patio, 30 degrees. Exactly. Like, that's when I want to drink it. So I'm just like, okay. And then once fall is coming, I'm like, okay, give me my stouts, give me my porters, like, those sorts of things. But Saisons, I love Saisons. ones.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't have a lot of people when I ask their favorite style, they say Saison, but
yeah,
there are definitely people who do love them now.
Yeah, I do love them, and you're seeing them at more breweries making them, I think. Like, Establishment made a really good one last summer, like a light one.
Yeah.
And then Born made one recently that was really good. But yeah, I love them. They're so good. Yeah, they're funky.
Are you a sour person?
Again,
Is
very
that seasonal?
Yeah, very seasonal. And yeah, I like them, but I feel like I can't drink a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's like one or two, but it's like if I'm like, going in, I'm like one and a few beers that night, I'm probably not going to have like 4 sours or something. Yeah.
I think the only sour that I've been able to have more than like 2 at is like the Phillips Dino Sour one, like that blackberry one.
Yeah.
Real nice.
Yeah. Nice camping. It's a nice camping beer.
Yes. And okay, so and like just as we start to wrap up, I just want to say like how simple it is of just asking what type of beer you like.
Yeah.
I think with women in particular probably is the first thing that they go like the servers just assume that you don't know craft beer.
Always.
And you are I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna mansplain to you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh my God. Or just like, don't try to explain me like what a Pilsner is. Like, I'm not an idiot. Like, not that if you don't know what it is, you're an idiot, but like, don't make that assumption. Or assumption of like what styles, right? And I think that also makes people very nervous to even say what style. Like, people don't really, they might not even know what style of beers they like. So even just being like, oh, like, what flavors do you like? Are you a person who likes this or this? And like, like, it's just being not assuming, I think.
It's those are those little acts of microaggression that I think a lot of servers aren't aware that they're doing.
Yes, always. Just assuming what people like and things like that is like very, or like sometimes someone else will bring the beer and I'll be like with my husband or something and they'll like put the darker beer in front of him and like the lighter one in front of me, whereas like I ordered the darker beer, and that's always interesting to me. I'm like, you wouldn't just do that with like a meal or something. Like, oh yeah, here you ordered this or whatever. Although I'm sure some people do, but it's like you ask, oh, who had the porter? Like, who had the Nipa? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's always interesting to me.
Yeah, like sometimes, I'll have a table and the old white dude is the one who gets the Manchester Mule, like not even drinking the beer.
Exactly.
And his wife's got the Pilsner and his daughter's got the stout. Like,
yeah, exactly. You just never know.
You just never know. What else do you want people to know about Hop Forward?
I want people to know about Hop Forward is that, we're just like a group of volunteers that are trying to make small differences with like big impact, and anyone can be involved, and you don't have to be part of Hop Forward to make a difference. I think is really important. You can see what we're doing, you can replicate it, you can get friends together and do something similar. Like, I think anyone doing this work is valuable, and I think if you want to partner, if you want to, work together, reach out to us. And there's also probably people in your community who are also interested in this. So it can be as simple as just like, getting friends together and trying to do something, because that's really how Hop Forward started.
Yeah. And it's just a great way for people get to find other places and find other people with similar interests.
Yeah.
Because you told me forever ago, I'm not the only black woman in Calgary who likes craft beer.
Yeah, and it's been really, whether, I think a part of Hop Forward and other things, it's been cool to see more people just in tap rooms, right? Yeah. Like, I'm sure you've noticed it over the years. Like, it is becoming more diverse. There are more non-white people more and more, I think, like, in tap rooms, which is really, really awesome to see.
Yeah. And I think, again, being part of, if you're a brewery, part of Hop Forward and really actively listening and trying to do better, it goes back to this ripple effect, because they're now going to think twice about some of their partners, whether it's a liquor store or restaurant and bar, and see what they're doing and go, well, why are you doing that? I don't know if we want to be a part of that.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's so important, and it seems so weird that we need to have this for beer, but we do.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, people think that they're like, why beer? Like, even my mom was like, what? It was like, yeah. I mean, the thing I always say, like, to close off is that I think there's always an assumption of who belongs in what spaces, and so maybe people don't think beer because they're like, oh, whatever. Like, maybe, you know, non-white people don't like beer or like something ridiculous, but it's like, no, like we belong everywhere, and every space is a black space, every space should be a black space, every space should be a queer space, every space should be for people with disabilities, and so until we get there, you know, there's lots of work to do, so we belong here.
I think there's just it's not just the breweries, it's just the world. We need to do better, and everybody, this should be, because it's even I really noticed, because I've been trying to learn more and figure out how I can make the world more accessible as an able-bodied person. I'm very privileged and lucky, but so I've noticed even just when the big snowfalls happen and they plow the street and then they go on the corner, I even have difficulties going over those big mountains.
So bad.
And I can only imagine the people with canes or in wheelchairs, or even a parent pushing their stroller.
I noticed it, the big thing when I became a parent, of like how bad the sidewalks are, or a lot of them like are just like curbs. They're not like the kind of ramp slope side, and it's like so hard to like get us through. I'm like, again, I'm an able-bodied person and I can lift things, and so I do, but I'm like, wow, like this is not okay.
Yeah. And I think this is one of those things that people just, they are doing the work and they're trying to make sure that it is welcoming for and they go down that list, but they always forget about non-able-bodied people.
Yes, always. It's always kind of an afterthought. Yeah.
So, last question I always like to ask people, what's awesome?
What's awesome? Well, right now, I think long weekends are awesome.
Yes. Oh, my goodness, yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's really awesome. And then second, I've been listening to the new Beyonce album nonstop, really, you know, trying to soak it in. And so that is also very awesome. So
I've been listening to, like, Jolene on repeat.
Yeah, so good.
I think that's, I don't know what is it, like, maybe because it's Dolly originally, but her, just, this take on it is such a good, like, so good. It's gonna be good, and maybe this will finally win her that Grammy for album of the year.
Yeah, talk about another space, country music. We can have a whole episode about that, about who belongs there. So
I know, and it's so, because I remember when she performed with the Chicks at the Grammys. Or CMT, I forget.
CMT.
It was the CMAs,
yeah.
And I remember watching the performance going like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is like a collab I never thought I needed, but it makes so much sense and it's perfect. And then the backlash.
Oh, so much backlash in the room, everywhere, and the Chicks talk about that. And that's the only way Beyonce actually could perform there, is going with the Chicks, which is wild to me. Like one of the biggest artists in the world. So yeah, I think it's an amazing album, and I try not to like stand billionaires too much, but I will stand for this album and the work that she's done on it. So yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you, Sharon, for being here, for talking, and just sharing all the awesomeness with Hop Forward.
Thank you for having me.
People can it's just Hop Forward.
Yeah. At Hop Forward AB on everything.
Yeah, and super easy to find, and always stuff going on, and just connect, and just, even if there's not an event, maybe you'll see by following them places that you should maybe check out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Sharon, for being here, and thank you all for passing time with me. We'll chat soon. Bye.